Caro's 9 smelled like boiled copper and old engine oil, the kind that clung to your nostrils and whispered sweet nothings about tetanus. Zaina's boots sank into red-orange grit with each step, her shadow slicing across the warped metal of shipping crates and derelict droids. The spaceport was quiet, too quiet in that suspicious way that usually preceded an ambush, or worse, a spontaneous interpretive dance by street performers with stun batons. She hated planets like this. Too many stairs, too many memories clawing up her spine like frostbite in reverse. People gave her a wide berth, like she was contagious with war crimes, which, to be fair, wasn't entirely untrue. The mark on her neck, 3 black lines curved like a smile but never funny, told anyone who knew what to look for exactly who she was and what she had done. She tried to keep moving, but her eyes caught on a disassembled mining droid slumped on its side beside a rust-specked workshop. The thing looked as miserable as she felt, half its plating gutted, optic sensors dangling like sad noodles. Whoever had last worked on it had either given up halfway or died of boredom. "Stop judging me," said a voice from behind the droid. Zaina's hand twitched toward the knife she no longer wore. A tall human in a grimy vest and a pair of goggles perched permanently on his forehead stepped into view. His hair stuck up at angles like he'd slept inside a turbine. He looked tired and mildly electrocuted. "Not you," he added, squinting at her. "I meant the robot, though you're giving it a run for its money." Zaina didn't respond. Words were currency, and she was bankrupt. The human tossed a spanner in the air, caught it with surprising grace, and pointed at the droid. "It's a GX-22, old model. Gets cranky if you talk to it in standard. I tried singing to it. It threatened to self-destruct." She blinked. "You're Cathari, right?" he asked, eyes narrowing a little, not in suspicion, more like curiosity. "You lot built half of these things during the Rift Wars, so either you're here to kill me, or you can fix it." The wind blew a sheet of foil past them. Somewhere, a vending unit cursed in binary. After a moment, he walked over to his cluttered workbench and picked up a data tablet, muttering, "Worth a shot." Zaina was about to turn away when something in the droid's innards twitched, barely noticeable. But to her, it was like hearing a heartbeat in a grave. She crouched beside it, one hand resting on a shattered servo. "Do you want to fix it?" the human called over, glancing up. "Because if not, I'm going to have to try again. And last time I did, it called me a moist hamstring." She glanced at him, then back at the machine. Her fingers moved instinctively, pulling open panels, rerouting wires. She spoke a single phrase in Cathari, low, soft, almost affectionate. The droid whirred once, then fell silent again. The human approached slowly, watching her work. "I'm Theo," he said, holding out a hand. She ignored it. "I see you're a hugger," he added, not offended. The droid beeped, faintly. Theo blinked. "Wait, did you sing to it?" She looked up, gaze sharp. "You shouldn't talk to machines like they're stupid. Tell that to my coffee maker. It's been holding a grudge since Tuesday." Zaina tightened the last bolt and stepped back. The GX-22 groaned, stood, and wobbled like an elderly goat on stilts, but it was alive. Theo let out a low whistle. "Okay, that's impressive and kind of terrifying." She turned to go. "Hey," he said and tossed something to her, a small, greasy rag. "You want a job?" She stopped. "I pay in parts and sarcasm, and possibly leftover noodles if Chad doesn't eat them first." She looked at the shop, barely a building, more a suggestion of one, then at Theo, whose grin was dangerously close to hopeful. After a pause, she caught the rag and walked inside. Behind her, Theo muttered, "Well, that's not a no." By the third day, Zaina had rewired the diagnostic table, reverse calibrated the plasma drill, and politely threatened the voice module of the customer service bot until it stopped calling everyone meat units. Theo returned from a parts run to find the droid bowing solemnly and offering philosophical advice in perfect Cathari. "Okay," he said, dropping a crate of fusion bolts. "Either you've fixed its ethics core or you've summoned a small god." "It kept offering foot massages," Zaina said without looking up from the thruster coil. "It was unsettling. I thought you'd enjoy some pampering. I have scales. Pampering is a war crime." Theo paused, weighing this. So, not even a back rub? She turned her head slowly. Do I look like I have a back that can be rubbed? He held up his hands in surrender and muttered, just trying to boost employee morale. That was how things were now. Jabs traded between tightened bolts and humming machinery. She stayed in the supply closet, converted into a cramped nest of tools and thermal blankets. She hadn't slept that deeply in cycles. There were still dreams, burning cities, silence on the comms, but sometimes they faded quicker now. Theo never asked why she flinched at loud clanks or kept her knives hidden in the air duct. He only once mentioned her past. They were working on a GX hoverbed, the kind used in planetary hospitals before the Dominion turned them into mobile autopsy tables. The air stank of ozone and patch cables. Theo handed her a hydro wrench without looking. You were a commander, weren't you? He asked. Zaina froze. He kept tinkering with the console, casual. The way you move, and you talk to machines like they're soldiers. She tightened a bolt, slow and deliberate. I don't care, he added. Not about rank or blood or alien scandals. He glanced sideways. But if we're going to keep working together, I'd prefer not to get assassinated mid-lunch. You eat things that resemble rubber insulation, she said. Assassination would be mercy. He grinned. That's a maybe then. No one's coming. I'm already dead to them. Theo opened his mouth, probably to make a joke about ghosts or taxes, but decided against it. That night, the toaster exploded. Well, technically it ejected a flaming bagel, which hit the cleaning drone, which panicked and triggered the fire suppression system. Xena was woken by a foam blast to the face and emerged from the supply closet like a soaked specter of vengeance. Theo sat on the floor, goggles fogged, hair filled with insulation, and said through a cough, So, no toast tomorrow? She stared at him. He stared back. And then she snorted. It wasn't a laugh, not exactly. More like a wheeze that had forgotten how to cry. But it was the closest she'd come in months. The next morning, she added stabilizers to the toaster. It now delivered toast with the grace of a ballet dancer. Theo cried actual tears. Days passed. Then a week. Clients came in. Miners, smugglers, one couple looking to modify a baby stroller with retractable hoverjets. Zaina worked in silence, efficient and terrifying. Theo joked and bartered, always 2 credits short and 3 days behind. And still in the background, something stirred. Twice, Zaina spotted surveillance drones hovering too long over the yard. Once, she saw the pattern of heat distortion, Cathari stealth tech, ancient but recognizable. She said nothing. She just sharpened her tools a little more slowly. One evening, as Theo struggled to program a refurbished nav core that insisted the fastest route to anywhere was through a black hole, Zaina sat watching the horizon. He noticed. You okay? She nodded. He handed her a cup, lukewarm, questionably flavored. Made you tea? Possibly. She sipped. It was certainly a liquid. You know, Theo said, flopping onto a crate beside her, you're kind of terrifying. She raised an eyebrow. But in a cozy way, like a nuclear warhead wearing a sweater. Silence stretched, warm despite the absurdity. She looked at him and said, You're the worst mechanic I've ever met. He beamed. That's high praise coming from a war criminal. And just like that, the quiet between them stopped being empty. The bounty hunter arrived on a Tuesday, because of course he did. Tuesdays were cursed. Mondays brought new parts. Wednesdays brought the hoverfruit merchant with suspiciously aggressive cantaloupes. But Tuesdays? Tuesdays brought trouble in leather boots and ego-scented cologne. Zaina noticed him the moment he stepped into the yard. Tall, chrome-plated boots, armor with unnecessary spikes, a plasma pistol at his hip, gleaming like it was polished daily by a team of underpaid gremlins. And most damning of all, he wore sunglasses. Kitty inside his helmet. She was halfway through calibrating a grav lift when Theo yelled from the other side of the lot, I don't do refunds. The bounty hunter ignored him and approached with the swagger of someone who hadn't lost a bar fight in at least 47 hours. I'm looking for Malloran, he said, voice processed through a filter designed to sound menacing. It mostly made him sound like an angry vacuum cleaner. Theo leaned against a half-disassembled cargo crawler, munching on a protein bar that tasted like hope had given up. Depends who's asking. Are you selling something? Because if it's insurance, we're already covered by regret. I've got a claim to settle, the man said, tapping a data chip against his gauntlet. You owe the Diraxi Syndicate 3 ships, 2.1 million credits, and one sentient lizard named Chad. Theo nodded thoughtfully. I can explain the ships and the credits, but Chad, that's slander. He chose to follow me. We had a soul bond. The bounty hunter blinked behind his sunglasses. I fed him, Theo added. Once. Zaina straightened, sliding a wrench into her belt like it was a blade. You want him dead? She asked casually. The bounty hunter turned, took her in, paused like someone recognizing a venomous insect, but unsure which end stings. Not dead, just delivered. Alive. Mostly. Theo raised a hand. Counteroffer. What if I give you a toaster that makes passive-aggressive compliments? Silence. Then the bounty hunter stepped forward. That was his first mistake. The second was not noticing Zaina move. She was beside him before he registered the blur, her hand gripping the back of his neck, wrench pressed to the base of his skull. His plasma pistol was gone, somehow now clutched by Theo, who looked at it like it might explode into bees. Whoa, Theo said. How'd you do that? Teach me. I want to do that. Step 1, Zaina said, pressing the wrench slightly harder. Don't be you. The bounty hunter tried to struggle. That was mistake number 3. Zaina didn't break bones, just dignity. She flipped him, stripped his gear, and deactivated his comlink before he hit the ground. He lay groaning beside the vending unit, which promptly offered him a warm banana smoothie with a condescending beep. Theo crouched beside him. You know, I'd feel bad, but you did threaten to kidnap me. Also, Chad wouldn't approve of your tone. Chad's a lizard, the bounty hunter muttered. Theo looked offended. He's a person. Later, they tied the man up with plasma cables and dumped him behind the parts shed with a note. He tried to repossess our lizard. Please return to sender. Theo flopped onto the workbench and stared at the ceiling. Well, that was the most exciting Tuesday we've had since the grease fire tried to unionize. Zaina sat beside him, hands still greasy with victory. You owe a syndicate? Technically, but in my defense, they said it was a no-interest loan. They just didn't specify whose interest. She shook her head. You're going to get us both killed. He glanced over, smile crooked. But you'll protect me, right? No, she said. He beamed. That's a yes. And somewhere inside her chest, a laugh stirred like a pilot light catching flame. Zaina found the note on the counter, tucked under a half-eaten nutrient bar and a suspiciously melted spanner. Gone to buy coolant. If I'm not back in 12 hours, assume I got distracted, abducted, or joined a ska band. Theo. She stared at the note, then at the nutrient bar, then at the still-smoking spanner. It was 8:14 in the morning. Either the laws of thermodynamics had surrendered, or Theo had tried to cook with a plasma torch again. She sighed and went back to work. The shop's AI, VERA, greeted her with its usual peppy horror. Good morning, Commander. I've cataloged 137 system errors since you last blinked. I'll blink less, she muttered, elbow deep in a grav stabilizer that was humming in D minor. Vera chirped. Excellent. Sleep is statistically linked to regret. By midday, she had repaired 2 hover bikes, reprogrammed the espresso drone to stop threatening customers, and found Chad asleep inside the coolant unit, curled up like a smug, scaly croissant. Theo didn't return. By hour 13, she was sharpening a bolt cutter and muttering curses in 3 dialects of Cathari when she heard the approach of unfamiliar engines. 3 of them. Smooth, sleek, military grade. They landed outside the shop without so much as a puff of dust. A trio of figures emerged, 2 armored guards flanking a Cathari envoy in the polished gray robes of the Dominion. Zaina didn't move, just watched. The envoy removed their helmet with deliberate care, revealing coppery skin and eyes the color of polished regret. They looked at her like someone evaluating an antique weapon, beautiful, obsolete, dangerous if left loaded. Zaina of Rel, they said. You've been difficult to find. She crossed her arms. You could have sent a message, or a fruit basket. We thought you were dead, she shrugged. So did I. Bit awkward, isn't it? The envoy stepped closer. You disobeyed a direct command. You interfered in classified operations. You spared enemies of the Dominion. Children, she said. They were children. You cost your unit. You cost your name. And yet here I am, she said, still fixing things while you're out here making threats in perfume and sequins. One of the guards raised their weapon. The envoy held up a hand. We're not here to kill you. Oh, Zaina said flatly. That's disappointing. You're a loose end, the envoy continued. But if you stay quiet, stay here, we'll let you rust in peace. Otherwise, well, Zaina waited. The pause stretched. Otherwise, the envoy smiled, we'll recycle you, or conscript you, depending on budget. She considered them, then looked past toward the shed where Theo's half-built hover van sat crookedly on mismatched legs, toward the smudged chalkboard that still had Fix Chad's attitude chip, scrawled in human handwriting. She nodded once. Message received. You done? The envoy tilted their head. You used to be sharper. She turned away. You used to matter. They left without further words. The ships hummed into the sky, polished and silent, like judgment ascending. 10 minutes later, the workshop door burst open and Theo stumbled in, covered in glitter, holding a shopping bag and reeking of some beverage that may have once been alcohol. I made a friend, he declared. His name's Floop, and he runs a coolant/party supply store. Did you know Glitter's banned on 17 moons? Xena stared. Theo blinked. What did I miss? She walked over, took the bag from his hand, and tossed it onto the counter. You got tracked. By party people? By my past, he frowned. Did they threaten you? She hesitated. No. He brightened. Well, that's progress. She sighed, but her mouth twitched. Then quietly she added, we need defenses. Theo rubbed his chin. You thinking turrets? Landmines? A really aggressive hologram of my mother? Something subtle. Subtle, huh? He nodded, eyes sparkling with the particular madness that only appeared when he was about to build something that should not exist. I've got just the thing. Chad sneezed from inside the coolant unit, and the shop, once a humble mess of wires and chaos, began to prepare for war. The first line of defense was a mop. Technically, it was an autonomous cleaning drone Theo had retrofitted with low-grade plasma jets, a sarcasm subroutine, and a disturbingly enthusiastic personality. It named itself Brenda. Brenda now patrolled the perimeter of the shop, spraying intruders with lemon-scented foam and screaming motivational slogans like, "Scrub your sins away," in 11 Galactic dialects. She's got potential, Theo said proudly, watching Brenda chase a passing bird with laser-guided precision. Might also need therapy. She reminds me of someone, Xena said, tightening the servo mount on a turret hidden inside a pile of scrap metal. Flattered, Theo replied, but I've never screamed during cleaning. I just cry silently. In the days that followed the envoy's visit, the shop transformed. Beneath its usual chaos, scattered engine parts, half-assembled gadgets, and whatever Chad had most recently stolen, a quiet order began to take root. Tripwires disguised as power cords, motion sensors woven into the patchwork roof, a cloaking field generator salvaged from a failed invisibility cloak project that had only ever made things aggressively pink. You really think they'll come back? Theo asked one night, while reprogramming the vending machine to dispense caffeinated shurikens. They always come back, Xena said. The Dominion doesn't send warnings, it sends rehearsals. Theo leaned back. So we're the opening act. She didn't answer, but her silence was edged like a blade being honed. They worked through the night. Well, Theo worked. Xena operated like an ancient war priest assembling relics for divine combat. He admired that, also feared it slightly, especially when she muttered things in Kithari while loading batteries the size of small dogs into a repulsor cannon shaped like a teapot. At sunrise, they tested the perimeter. The foam mines went off in a synchronized burst, coating Theo in something that smelled like anti-rust and disappointment. I call that one the humiliator, Xena said, arms crossed. Theo spat out foam. You're enjoying this. I haven't had a hobby in years. He grinned through the mess. We should get matching uniforms. We're not a team. Chad already made us matching capes. Chad is a lizard. Chad believes in us. Zaina shook her head and walked off, but she didn't throw the cape away. Later that week, a trader named Klivak stumbled in, bleeding and babbling about cloaked ships outside orbit. Zaina patched him up with one hand and calibrated the defense field with the other. Theo offered him tea. It burst into flames. That's the fourth one this week, Theo said, holding up the cup with tongs. Do we have cursed water again? Zaina checked the radar. Number, but we've got company. 3 hours later, the first wave hit. It wasn't soldiers, yet, just drones. Silent, sleek, efficient. The kind built for recon and intimidation. They swooped in like metal crows. Brenda took out the first with a battle cry and a mop soaked in napalm. The second exploded mid-air when it tried to scan the vending machine. The third got as far as the workshop door before a tripwire dropped a crate labeled "Definitely Not Dangerous" on it. Inside was a toaster with unresolved anger issues. After the smoke cleared, Theo stood on the roof, hands on his hips, wearing the cape. Zaina climbed up beside him. They'll escalate. I know. You should leave. He looked at her, and for a moment the grin faded. You really think I'd survive out there without you? Maybe. He nodded at the smoldering remains of the drones. Well, I definitely wouldn't survive in here without you. She looked out across the horizon, where 3 more blips blinked into view on the scanner. Theo nudged her with his elbow. Think we'll win? No. Will we survive? Also no. He smiled. Perfect. Let's build more traps. Chad hissed in approval, or indigestion. Hard to tell. Either way, war was coming, and this junkyard was ready. The sky opened with a polite boom. It wasn't the kind of boom that screamed fire and fury. It was the kind that said, "Excuse me, we're about to ruin your afternoon in the most formal way possible." Theo looked up from his breakfast burrito and sighed. Yup, that's the sound of unwanted guests. Zaina was already moving, sliding on her gauntlet with the smooth menace of someone who had named all her weapons and whispered to them at night. Brenda activated herself with a warble. Cleaning initiated, purify the enemy. 3 cloaked Dominion dropships descended, shimmering like wet ink. They touched down with a synchronized hiss, elegant and annoying. From them came a full strike team in matte black armor, all of them moving with the confidence of people who'd never been hit with a toaster. Vera chimed from the overhead speaker. Incoming threats detected. Would you like me to play your Doomsday playlist? Hit me, Theo said. Old Cathari battle hymns blasted through the speakers, remixed with synth pop and, Theo swore, cowbell. Zaina didn't blink. She charged. The first wave hit the minefield and discovered, too late, that some of the foam bombs had been replaced with bioglue and glitter. Tactical sensors blinded, pride wounded. One soldier screamed, "Why does it sparkle?" before slipping on a rogue hover wrench and knocking out 2 teammates. Zaina moved like memory and thunder. Her fists cracked helmets. Her boots snapped servo joints. Her elbow introduced itself to a soldier's collarbone in 6 languages. Theo took the left flank, piloting his hoverlift like a caffeinated crab. He slammed it into the side of an armored transport and shouted, "This counts as a valid driving test." Chad leapt from a rooftop, tiny claws extended, and latched onto a soldier's face with the dedication of a tax auditor. The Dominion, to its credit, recalibrated quickly. A second wave deployed sentry drones and shock troops with adaptive shields. That's when Theo activated the emergency defense. Plan 9. Plan 9 consisted of 1 repurposed food replicator rigged to spit boiling soup at high velocity, 3 malfunctioning amusement park animatronics set to chaotic neutral, and a 4-meter inflatable duck packed with high-yield EMP bursts. The duck detonated with majestic dignity, short-circuiting every drone in a 30-meter radius. One of the animatronics shouted, "Who wants a hug?" and power-punched a trooper into unconsciousness. Theo wheezed. That went better than expected. Zaina, hair slick with rain and victory, didn't reply. She yanked the final attacker's helmet off and held him by the collar. "Who sent you?" The soldier coughed. "Commander Solarith. She's coming. Personally." Zaina's jaw tensed. That name hit like ice water. Theo looked between them. "Friend of yours?" "Worst kind," she said. "Mentor." As the smoke cleared, Theo sat down on a crate, bleeding slightly from somewhere unimportant. "So, we've annoyed them enough to send the big boss." Zaina didn't respond. She was staring at her reflection in a cracked visor, something unreadable in her eyes. He nudged her foot. "You okay?" "I used to want her approval." "Well," Theo said, pulling out a snack bar, "she can't be that impressive. I mean, look at us." She looked. The wreckage, the team, the glitter still drifting in the air. For a moment, she almost smiled. Then she said, "We need more ducks." Theo unwrapped the snack bar. "I'll see what I can do." Vera chimed in. "Victory probability, 11%. Morale level, statistically absurd. And still, they began rebuilding. Because that's what you do when the world sends you warnings. You sharpen your tools, you strengthen your walls. And if you're Theo and Zaina, you make sure the next duck has lasers. Theo woke up under a pile of spare parts, 3 wrench handles, and something that may or may not have been Chad. The lizard blinked at him, unimpressed, then scurried off to chew on the shop's wiring like it was a delicate appetizer. "Morning," Theo croaked, sitting up and dislodging a spring from his hair. "Or possibly Tuesday. I've lost track again." From the workshop floor came the whirring sound of Brenda executing her usual patrol pattern. Fast, aggressive, and heavily scented. "Threat detected. Breakfast burrito mold. Neutralizing." A muffled explosion followed. Zaina didn't flinch. She was tightening the calibration rings on a modified turret, one knee on the workbench, eyes focused. Theo limped over, sipping something that claimed to be tea but tasted like it had grown legs and tried to escape. "You know," he said, "most people prep for a galactic assault with weapons, strategy, and fear. You built an ambush inside a fake vending machine and programmed it to scream compliments." "She called it positive reinforcement," Vera chimed helpfully. Zaina responded without looking up. "If someone's going to die, they should feel good about themselves on the way out." Theo raised his cup. "Cheers to that." The repairs had taken days, maybe more. The Dominion's last strike had left behind scorch marks and a depressingly artistic hole shaped like Chad in the ceiling. And now the final message had come. A beacon dropped from orbit. Simple, clinical, and signed by Solarith herself. "Stand down. We will not offer this again." Zaina stared at it every night, unreadable. Theo offered alternatives, fake identities, a new planet, a portable business model selling illegal jam. She didn't answer. Instead, she worked. More turrets, cloaking generators salvaged from smuggling ships, booby traps that involve pudding, a portable black hole, and Theo's laundry. "I didn't even know I owned this many socks," he whispered once, horrified. Then came the refugees. 1, then 3, then 12. Miners, freighters, a pair of rogue medics, even a poet who claimed her rhymes caused minor temporal instability. They'd heard of the alien woman who stood her ground, of the mechanic who built weapons from kitchen appliances, of the scrapyard that said no to the Dominion, and lived. Zaina looked at them all, and she didn't tell them to leave. One night, Theo found her sitting on the roof beside the duck cannon, watching stars blink overhead. "Why did you stay?" he asked. She thought for a long moment. "Because you did," she finally said. Silence stretched. Theo reached into his coat and pulled out a datapad. "So, unrelated, but I submitted your name to the Galactic Tech Expo." Zaina blinked. "You what?" He grinned. "Well, technically I submitted our name under the category Innovative Defensive Engineering in Theatrical Chaos." Her eyes narrowed. "Theo, we're finalists." "Theo, there's a trophy shaped like a wrench wearing a cape." She stared at him, mouth slightly open. He added quickly, "And we get free snacks." "You dragged me into a tech competition during a war?" "I multitask." She considered throwing him off the roof. Instead, she said, "We're not leaving." He nodded. I didn't say we should, but it's nice to be noticed for something other than criminal negligence. Below them, Brenda warbled. Target neutralized. Sidewalk 83% sanitized. Chad burped, and above them, in the far stars, ships moved. Solareth was coming, but so was something else. A scrapyard full of misfits who finally had something to protect. The Galactic Tech Expo was less of a formal event and more of a chaotic, neon-lit bazaar where inventions were judged not only by utility, but by how loudly they exploded or serenaded the judges. Zaina stood in the middle of it all, wearing a jumpsuit that was slightly too human, with a name tag that read, Fixer of Things, Breaker of Rules. Theo bounced beside her, humming a tune suspiciously similar to an ancient Cathari war song remixed with bubblegum pop. Their entry was the Salamander, Theo's latest creation, a sleek hovercraft shaped vaguely like a salamander, complete with thrusters that emitted harmless but impressively theatrical bursts of colored smoke. The control panel was a mess of blinking buttons, levers, and one big red button marked Definitely Don't Push. During the demonstration, the Salamander performed spectacularly until Chad, who had somehow snuck aboard, activated the emergency karaoke mode. Suddenly, the craft blasted a medley of operatic lizard songs at the stunned crowd, lights flashing in a disco frenzy. The judges were stunned. Then they laughed. Then they gave a standing ovation. Zaina looked at Theo, who was blushing under a pile of congratulatory confetti. Your ship might be a hazard, she said, but it's the most alive thing here. Theo grinned. Just like the crew. They didn't win the grand prize. Instead, they earned a special award, Most Innovative Spirit. It came with a trophy shaped like a wrench wearing a cape, exactly as Theo had promised. Back on Karos 9, the news spread fast. The Dominion sent a bureaucrat to clarify that the earlier claim on Zaina was an administrative error. In other words, they had officially misplaced her dossier. Zaina held the letter, letting the absurdity of it settle in. The enemy's red tape was often more effective than their weapons. She looked around the workshop, the cacophony of parts, laughter, and life, and felt a flicker of something she hadn't known for a long time. Belonging. Theo appeared with 2 steaming cups of synth coffee, one held out to her like an offering. You changed your destiny, he said softly, not by fighting the past, but by building a future. She accepted the cup, warmth spreading through her fingers. And you? She asked. He shrugged, grinning. I just fixed a lot of things, mostly toasters, but maybe people too. Outside, Chad climbed onto a stack of crates and gave a lizard-sized roar. Zaina smiled, truly smiled, the weight of exile and war lifting just enough to let her breathe. The alien warrior, once discarded and feared, had found a home, not in distant stars or dusty outposts, but here, amid rust and friendship, laughter and loyalty. The tools in her hands weren't just instruments of war or survival anymore. They were the keys to rewriting her story. And as the twin suns set over Karos 9, painting the sky with molten gold, Zaina and Theo prepared for whatever came next. Because now they were no longer just outcasts or mechanics. They were a team, a family, and a legend in the making.